Welcome to this final session of Draw Along under the Virtual Events program at Quagoma. I'd like to thank Shannon for doing the introduction. I'd like to thank HSBC for sponsoring this series of workshops that have been wonderful. And I know there's a number of people with us here this morning that have been here for the entire series, and that's really humbling. Thanks, y'all. So I would like to also share Shannon's acknowledgement of country and the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting here this morning. I'd also like to pay my respects to First Peoples everywhere and to to elders past, present, and emerging. So welcome to my studio here in Chelmer. And as I always say, I am sitting right adjacent to the train tracks here. So you might occasionally hear some rumbling in the background. And somebody was out leaf blowing or whippersnippering this morning, but hopefully the sound will be all right for y'all. I am going to go through a very particular type of drawing this morning, a type of drawing that I love. I call motion drawing, a way of animating your drawings and bringing them to life. And we're going to use a couple of different methods for doing that. I'm really excited about. This is a method that I teach in my second year drawing classes at the Queensland College of Art at Griffith University, where I teach. And we're going to just give you a little taste of it. This is sometimes, I really love these workshops because this is a subject that many people find quite intimidating because of the technology or because of the history of film or animation. But once you explore it a bit, you'll see just how accessible and just how easy it is. And I've done these workshops and used this method with small children, ages 6, 7, 8, and all the way up to adults, and it works very, very well. So we are going to talk a little bit about the piece of software, the app that I gave the small tutorial on for today, and I'm going to show you that app. However, if you don't have it, that's all right. You're welcome to just draw along with us, and I promise you won't be missing out on that much. Also, if you don't have the app, but you have a tablet or a computer or a camera or a phone or anything that can take still pictures, you can also take a series of photographs along with us this morning. These different apps allow you to then import photographs into them and then create your motion drawings, your animation. So even if you haven't yet gotten the app, there's a number of different ways that you can participate here with us this morning, and I'll take you through those processes. All right, now, before we get started, I know there have been a number of questions, and I think Shannon's going to come in on the end and talk a little bit about this too. And thank you to everybody that's been connecting with me over Instagram and sending me images, wonderful images, tagging me and communicating with me there. And of course, we are getting flooded with people asking about what's next. And what's next in 2 weeks, I'm starting up at the university. Term starts up again, and I'll be teaching, but I am speaking with Shannon and the team at Quagoma, and we hope to be able to do another series of these in the very near future. And I think Shannon's going to talk a little bit more about that here at the end. Okay, but thank you so much. I mean, the encouragement and the feedback has been wonderful, so thank you for that. All right, today then let's talk about the materials that you're going to need. And again, we are going to explore a little bit from the Quagoma collection, and we're going to look at two works today. One of those a photograph, and one of those a print, but a print that is derived from a drawing and from a film work, actually, a motion drawing work, an animation work. And we'll talk a little bit about that word animation as we go through our workshop here this morning. So materials are very simple this morning. Paper, whatever type of paper you have is fine. You'll see me drawing in pencil this morning, and so pencil is fine. If you have pens or textures or anything, you'll be able to work with those. I will be showing you a technique of erasure. And so if you have your good soft pencils, and for those of you who were here last week, we talked a lot about pencils. But if you also have any type of an eraser, even if it's the eraser that's on the end of your pencil or any other type of eraser that you can use, we will play a little bit with erasure this morning. And I forgot, I apologize, I didn't put erasers on the list of materials for this week, but if you have one lying around, grab it now. Okay, now the other thing that you'll need, we are actually going to be making small drawing puppets. And so a needle and thread. We're going to be making very, very simple joints. If you have a needle and thread, that will work. If you don't, even a small piece of tape will work. So I've got my tape here as well. So I've got my pencils, I've got my erasers, I've got my tape, I've got my needle and thread, a pair of scissors, or two pairs of scissors, one fairly cruddy pair of scissors for cutting your paper, and then if you've got a good pair of scissors, sewing scissors that you use for cutting your thread, that's fine too. All right, so you'll have all of those things, and then the final thing is your device. If you're going to be working along with us this morning with the app, either your tablet or your mobile will work fine. And I've got my tablet sitting right over here behind me. I'll switch cameras in just a minute so you can see it, and I'll take you through the process of setting up for this workshop and how you can get your tablet set up as well, or your device set up to take the images. So before we get started, then I'm going to go ahead and grab the images that we're going to use this week, which I have on the tablet. And I want to just talk a little bit about those two images, one by Olive Cotton and the other one by William Kentridge. Okay, so I'm going to show you those images now as I switch over. Let me just grab my other tablet here and I will show those to you. All right, now this is a really, oops, let me just log in. This is a really interesting juxtaposition of two works, because the Olive Cotton photograph, which many of you may be familiar with, is probably her most famous image, probably her most famous photograph. And it's always interesting to me when an artist's most well-known work is also not typical of their work. And that's certainly true of this piece. So I'm going to switch over cameras here so you can take a look at this. So let's switch that. There we go. All right, so there's the Olive Cotton. And this is a work called Teacup Ballet. As you can see, it's from the 1930s. And many of you would be familiar with Olive Cotton. She's one of the better known modernist photographers, Australian modernist photographers. Also very well known for being a childhood friend of Max Dupain, sharing a studio with Max Dupain, although she referred to herself as his studio assistant. And also Max Dupain was her first husband. And Max Dupain's works, I know, are iconic Australian works, but Olive Cotton was a great photographer in her own right. And this is a really interesting photograph. Here, Teacup Ballet just was predicated on a simple observation that she made when she had bought these new teacups at Woolworths to bring into the studio, and noticed that these funny little triangular handles on the teacups looked like bent arms bent at the elbow. And so she set them up in her studio, arranged them, put a powerful light behind them, as you can see, and created this wonderful and whimsical photograph, which anthropomorphizes the teacups and makes them look like dancers. And we are going to make the Teacup Ballet very literal today. And we're going to do some drawings based on this photograph, and then we are actually going to bring them to life. We're going to get some movement into them. So we're going to look at this Olive Cotton work, and the other work we're going to look at today from the collection is William Kentridge's Atlas Procession. There's two versions of this particular print. William Kentridge is a South African artist from Johannesburg and still works out of Johannesburg today. Spends a lot of time moving between Johannesburg and London, but continues to work out of South Africa, who of course came up in the period of apartheid, and his work deals with apartheid very, very explicitly. Now, sorry, let me move my microphone a little bit closer. This is a wonderful work based on a work from so this is from 2000. It's based on a work he did in 1999, which was a filmic work, a shadow puppet work of a procession walking across the screen. And so in this work, he reframes that procession around the earth, as you can see around the map, of these characters, and they're characters and motifs that he repeats often in his work. And we are going to use a couple of these motifs today. We're going to use the shower that you see over on this side. We're going to use that motif, and we're also going to use this flag bearer that you see here, and we're going to do some drawings based on these characters, and we're also going to introduce some movement into those as well. Kentridge is probably working today, the contemporary artist associated with drawing who is probably most well known internationally. And he's an artist who works across various mediums, across print and drawing and film and animation and even theater. He's done opera, a very, very prolific artist. Let's switch back here so I can talk for a second. a very prolific artist. And one of the interesting things about Kentridge is even though he oftentimes works in this form that we would call animation, he doesn't like to use that word animation, and he resists it because he says in his own mind he's not an animator. And when he says that, he thinks of animation as a professional class. And just let's throw this out here right at the beginning. This term motion drawing that I'm using for this week is a term that it's not a very common term, but it's a term that I like to use. In the same sort of vein as motion pictures or moving images, the idea of motion drawing, animation as a professional discipline is fairly young. It's when we think of it as a kind of filmic animated film of the 20th century, and has become a professional discipline. Right down South Bank where I teach at QCA, right next door is the Griffith Film School, which has a massive animation program. We have people doing PhDs in animation. And it's certainly quite a bit different from the cartoons of the early 20th century. But animation just means to give the illusion of movement or real movement, to bring things to life. And so animation predates photography and film. There are, of course, flip books and zoetropes, those kinds of toys, but even puppets are considered a type of animation. So when we use the word animation, we really think of it in its contemporary industrial context of filmmaking and film production, and even in games. But so that's why I'm choosing to move away from that term of animation, and instead talk about motion drawing, the way that you can do drawings but still integrate movement and animation into those works. All right, so let's begin right away. I want to do several different types of motion drawing today, and so I want to jump right into it. I'm hoping that we get through 4 of them in the next 40 minutes together, and I know that time is going to be tight. So first, let's talk about setting up your studio so that you can work. All right. I'm going to move this tablet so that you can still see it. I'll just put it off to the side here. And I'm going to show you now how I'm going to set up. Okay, I'm going to move that off to the side. I'm going to show you now how I'm going to set up this tablet, which has the camera. And this is the one where I'm actually going to be creating my motion drawings. So let's flip over to the other camera and I'll show you how I do this. All right, I'm just going to flip that on here. All right, when you have your tablet here, I'll move this one out of the way so it doesn't interrupt us. The important thing is that you get your tablet in such a position that the camera is pointing down, and it's pointing down at the surface that you're ultimately going to be placing your drawings on down below. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do that. Students of mine will oftentimes put their phones or their tablets on top of countertops or tables, and then point them down at the floor or a stool or something that's underneath. You can see in this case, all that I've done is place my tablet up on a box. So I've elevated it about 50 centimeters up above the surface of my board here, and that's plenty of space so that I can look down and see what I'm doing. Now, the other thing, if your camera is sitting flat, what you'll ultimately see is a lot of the surface of the box that it's sitting on. So what I'm going to do is just take a couple of spacers here, put those under the camera. I'm just going to take a couple of spacers. I have little pieces of felt, and I'm just going to put those underneath the tablet here just to prop it up and get a bit of an angle as it points down at my board. Now, it's not going to want to stay still there. So this is where my sticky tape comes in. One of the important things when you're doing this type of motion drawing or stop motion is to keep your camera as still as you possibly can. So I'm going to take a piece of sticky tape here, and I'm actually going to put it right across the bottom of my tablet, and I'm going to stick it to the box that it's sitting on. And that's going to both hold that angle that I've just created there, and it's also going to keep it still. So as I'm taking each one of the frames, this won't be moving at all. Now, some people don't mind that movement of the camera. It'll give a little bit of quirkiness to your final outcome. But if you're able to, just anchor your device down. And the way I'm going to do that is just by taping it. All right. Now, the app is called Stop Motion Studio by a company called Cat Eater. It is free for iOS or Android. If you're working on other devices, you might have to use some sort of different application. But as I said, you can also just use your camera and take individual photos, and you'll be able to string those together and import those in animation later. So I'm going to open the studio, and there it is right there. That's the interface, which I shared with you in the tutorial. And then I'm just going to click on the little plus icon here in the upper right. And that little plus icon, new movie, is going to take me right into the interface. There it is. where I will actually be shooting my individual photos. All right, and I'm just going to turn this a little bit as well so you can see it quite clearly there on your screen. And now you can see as I put my hand down underneath it, you see what the camera there is seeing underneath. And then the system is quite clear and quite easy. You simply have a record button there, a red record button, and every time you're ready to take a frame, you just hit that red record button. We'll go frame by frame through our first motion drawing, and when we've done that, this application will instantly put that into an animation and roll it through for us. So you don't have to do any other type of rendering or anything like that for those of you who've used these types of programs before. It's very, very simple. And like I said, I've used it with very young children who have done amazing things with it. My kids like to animate their Lego with it. All right. So I'm going to leave that there now. That's all set up and ready to go. And let's move on to doing our very first drawing, just as an example, our very first motion drawing. And we're going to go back now to Olive Cotton's Teacup Ballet to do our first one. All right, so let me just go back to that now on the tablet, and I'll show it to you. I'll put it right down there below so everyone can see it. All right, so with the Teacup Ballet, there, we are now going to do a very simple drawing. So grab yourself a sheet of paper, grab pencil, pen, whatever you have, and let's dive right into it. And I'm going to do it right up here so you can see it quite clearly. There we go. All right, now I'm going to take a soft pencil. For those of you who were here with me last week, we talked all about pencils, and I'm going to take a very soft pencil, in this case an 8B pencil, to do my drawing. All right, now, oops, I can see that you can't see the Olive Cotton anymore. Let me slide that up so you can still see it. Hopefully there, that's better. See if it stays for me. All right. I've got too many things going on at once, y'all. Let me just move that and put a clip so it doesn't slide. There we go. Let's try that again. Okay, now, when you do this first one, we are actually going to do the drawing, then we're going to cut it out, and then we're going to stitch it back together to make a small drawing puppet. So you don't want to do this too large. It has to be relatively small. So as I'm drawing it, it'll only be about the size of my finger, the entire drawing when it's done. We're also going to do the drawing in two parts, because we're going to stitch those two parts together. So I'm going to imagine the teacup and saucer as one part, and I'm going to imagine the cast shadow as a second part. All right, so I'm going to begin, just going to move the mic in closer here, by just doing a very quick sketch of that teacup. Again, not too large. Looking at the Olive Cotton, quick little sketch, and then adding that beautiful modernist triangular handle to the side. All right, now as you're sketching it, you can put in a little bit more detail if you'd like. You can put in a little bit less. You can work in a more gestural line like I have, or a more graphic line. That's up to you. All right, and I'm also going to put a sense of the saucer in there too. You can see I don't mind that I'm drawing right through the teacup to get that elliptical shape. That's fine. Put a little bit in there. All right, a little bit there and a little bit of that shadow. Okay, so there's my teacup sitting on its saucer, and I'm happy with that. Okay, now, again, you can see the size of that relative to my hand. Very, very small drawing. You don't want it to be too large. And then I'm going to do a completely separate drawing for the cast shadow. So I'm now looking at that shape of the cast shadow, and I'm going to come down beneath my teacup, and I'm going to draw that cast shadow. Nice big circle for that cast shadow, which then has the teacup, which comes down and out of it like that, and then has that beautiful cast shadow of the teacup's handle. Okay, then I'm going to just go ahead and shade that in very quickly using a good freehand technique. Okay. Not worry too much about any detail at this point, because the beauty of this is going to be in the movement that we create. All right, but I do want to get a good density there, so I'm just going to go over it a couple of times. There we go. And there's my cast shadow. All right. So again, not too large. If it's too big, it won't really fit in the frame when you begin doing your motion drawing. All right. So I have these two pieces. The next thing I'm going to do is cut them out. And of course, when you're cutting paper, don't use your good scissors. Use your paper cutting scissors. Paper is terrible for the sharpness of your blades. So I'm going to take this now, okay, and I'm going to cut it out. Now I still want to be able to see my drawing. So I'm not going to cut right to the edges of my drawing. I'm going to actually leave a bit of paper to the outside because I want to see that lovely drawing that I've done, those gestural lines. There we go. Ah, you switched me over here. Good. All right, I'm going to cut that out. Okay, and you join along with me. Go ahead and cut out your teacups. All right. And so there is my little teacup puppet right there. I'll set that down. And then I'm going to come to my cast shadow here, and I'm going to also cut out my cast shadow. And again, I'm not going to cut directly to the edge of the drawing. I'm going to let that drawing breathe a little bit and see a little bit of paper and edge. All right. There we go. Okay, and now the joint. All right, so you have, let's switch cameras again now. All right, now you have these two little paper puppets that you've just made. The next thing that you're going to want to do is stitch them together, all right? And stitching them together is very important because that's going to hold that, those two puppets against one another and give you a pivot point that you can use. So ultimately, that teacup drawing is going to be there, and the cast shadow is going to be sitting underneath it, just like that, all right? Now, there are a number of different ways to create joints when you're doing these types of drawing paper puppets. One of the ones that I like the best is using a simple stitch, a needle and thread. And the reason that I like to do it that way is because it is a method that was done by one of my favorite artists of the 20th century, an artist named Lotte Reiniger, who was a German animator, made the oldest existing feature-length animated film in the 1920s, The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, which is a shadow puppet, stop-motion animated thing, which is just one of the most glorious things you'll ever see. You can watch the entire thing on YouTube, and it's beautiful. And it's also no coincidence that I have a daughter named Lotte. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to use that method of stitching these two things together. And for that, we're going to use a needle and thread. And we're going to do a very, very loose stitch. Now, for those of you out there that are quite good with a needle and thread, you might have some thoughts about doing some really elaborate kinds of joints here. We are going to do one simple stitch, though, and we're going to keep it loose. You don't want the stitch to be too tight, because if it's too tight, you won't be able to move these two puppets against each other very easily. So you want it to be quite a loose little stitch. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to thread my needle. All right. Grab my scissors. Okay. I'm going to take a length of thread, not too long. I'm looking at probably about 1 foot long there for my length of thread. And oh boy, I'm going to test my eyes here in the video with y'all. Try to thread this needle. All right, there we go, got it. Okay, so I have my needle threaded there. Okay, let's switch back, there it is. So I've got my needle and thread, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper puppets, and I'm going to do one very simple stitch. Again, I'm going to overlap them there, okay? And then I'm going to come from the back, and I'm going to pierce right through both pieces of paper, back to front, okay? I'm going to pull that needle through, but don't pull the thread all the way through. Okay, so leave that trail of thread hanging out the back. I'm even going to hold that with my other finger. And then I'm going to come over just a tiny bit. Okay, if it's too close together, it'll tear through the paper. So give yourself a little bit of a gap there in between the two holes, and then pierce from front to back to make one little stitch that goes through. All right, just like that. All right. And then you should have those two tails of thread hanging out the back. Now I'm going to pull it through till I have about 1 inch, a little bit more of thread hanging out there. And then, excuse me, I got my needle in my mouth. I'm going to just trim that thread. Okay, and I'll set my needle down. And that's it. I'm not going to tie it, or I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to let those two ends of that thread just hang. out the back there. I can just give them a little tug if I need it to be tighter, but I want that to be fairly loose there so that it holds them in place. It gives me a pivot point, but doesn't actually impede the motion of them at all. Okay, so now if I come down here, I'm going to move olive cotton out of the way. There. And I'm going to set that down below. There. There we go. All right. And now you can see it quite clearly in the camera here that's pointing down at that brown paper that I've got. All right. And I'm setting it down on brown paper just so it's easy for you to see in the video. You can set this down directly on your tabletop, on your floor, on a sheet of white paper. You can put it on any surface you want. Doesn't really matter at all. Now comes the animation of it, or the bringing the motion, the movement into the drawing. And we're going to do this as frame by frame. So I'm going to come here now. I'm inside the app, or you can do this with your camera, and just take the first frame. Bang. And there it is. All right, now what I'm going to do without moving that camera at all is I'm now going to come in and I'm just going to bring the whole thing slightly to the right, and I'm going to start moving that cast shadow relative to the teacup. Okay, just a little bit, just a minute movement. And then I'm going to take another frame. Okay, I'm now going to move it over a tiny bit more, move that cast shadow. I'm rotating that cast shadow counterclockwise there. Take another frame, move it a tiny bit more, rotate a tiny bit more, another frame. All right, and I can just keep doing this very, very quickly, just moving that teacup and moving that cast shadow relative to the teacup. And that little stitch that you've put in should give you a pivot point, but it shouldn't impede the movement at all there. Okay, so I've already taken 8 frames, all right, going across. Now let's switch back before we move forward. Let's switch back to the other camera and talk a little bit about frame rate. All right, in the 1920s, the standard frame rate for films was set at 24 frames per second. And this was largely a consequence of sound. When sound, the first sound films were invented, the first optical sound, when the sound was printed onto the film strip so the sound would be synchronized, there had to be a set rate, frequency it's called, for that film. And that was set at 24, and films remained at 24 frames per second for decades and decades. Now, video is different, television is different, digital is different, but that's the way film was, 24, and 24 remains a standard. Animation, though, was always shot at 12 frames per second, because once you hit 12 frames, not always, but mostly shot at 12 frames per second, once you hit about 10 to 12 frames per second, the human eye ceases to be able to perceive individual frames, and they start to run together and give the illusion of smooth motion. So to save time and to save money, animators would often do what's called shooting on twos, which means they would do 12 drawings per second, and then every one of those drawings was repeated twice, so that you would get only 12 drawings for 24 frames per second. Now, some animations are done at a full 24. Other animations, I grew up in the 70s, and cheap animations that were done in the 70s were even shot on 3s or 4s, 8 frames per second or 6 frames per second, which makes them very, very jerky, all right? But most of them were done at 12. So we've taken 8 frames so far. Once we hit 12, we've got 1 second of movement there. The more that you accumulate, it goes on and on and on, right? And in this particular application that we're using, you can actually set the frame rate, and I'll show that to you really briefly, but just to show you why that number matters. So you can imagine if you wanted to do a 5-minute film, each one of those minutes has 60 seconds, each one of those seconds has 12 frames, you can do the math. It's a lot of work, a lot of labor. Okay, let's move back over here again. All right, so thus far we've taken 8 frames. I'm going to take a few more. So I'm going to move this again, and I'm going to rotate it even more. There we go. Beautiful, that's number 9. And now I'm going to hold the teacup and just start rotating that shadow back again, just as an example. Okay, rotate, shoot, rotate, shoot, rotate, shoot, rotate, shoot. All right, now I have lucky 13 frames. Now, if you're using the Stop Motion Studio app that I shared with you, right next to that record button, you have a play button. And if you hit that play button, which I will do now, you will see your little motion drawing and your little cast shadow moving around there with your paper puppet, all right, in only 13 frames. Now, this is just a demonstration of how simple it can be to do this. You can make very, very elaborate drawings and drawing puppets, and we'll make a more elaborate one here in just a few minutes. But this is just a demonstration of how quick and easy this can be and how it can add a dimension to your drawings, which is completely different from the static two-dimensional drawing that you may have always practiced. Motion is something that obviously can be implied in a drawing, but here we're making that animation literal, or bringing life to those drawings. All right, so that's the first type of drawing that I want to show you. I now want to move on to the second one using the Kentridge. Okay, so I'm going to stop that. I'm going to hit pause. Okay, I should say before I go on to the Kentridge and the second style, at this point you could actually save this and export this movie as well. If I hit this little arrow right up here, and you should have an arrow somewhere there on your screen. All right, I hit there. That'll take me back into my start screen, and you'll see the little teacup animation that I just made right there. If I click and hold on it, this menu will pop up on the side. And part of that menu is a little share icon. That's the one that looks like a V that's been turned on its side with the dots. If I click that share icon, I'll open up a secondary menu there that says Export Movie. And if I hit Export Movie, now I can download that movie to my device. I can share it to my Google Drive. I can upload it to iPhoto or to YouTube even, so you can share it. And that's going to be important for us later because we want you all to share your motion drawings with us. I'm going to cancel out of that now, and I'm going to create a new movie. All right, so I've gotten out of that screen, and I'm going to come here. I'm going to go to New Movie. And I'm going to start now showing you the next method that we are going to do. All right, so let me cancel out of there. New movie, and that'll take us back into our camera window. All right, the next method that I'm going to show you is based on the Kentridge. And this is a method that William Kentridge certainly did not invent, this method of motion drawing, but he uses it very extensively in his work. And there's the Kentridge Procession, again, that we were talking about earlier. And this type of motion drawing that he uses is called erasure animation, where you do a single drawing and then you redraw on top of that drawing and erase parts of it and redraw on top of it and erase parts of it. And at every stage you take a single frame. Then when you run all those frames together, it creates an animation. So what I'd like you to look at here is, whoops, let's go back to the Kentridge and let me zoom in. There we go. What I'd like you to look at is this little, it's turned on its side, but right here, you'll see there's a little bathtub with a shower in it. And that's what we are going to use as our example for this erasure animation that we're about to do. We're going to do our own version of that. So I'm going to set the Kentridge up there so it's out of the way. Hopefully now everybody can see. Now again, I'm seeing below here to my white drawing paper, and I'm seeing my my camera view through the stop motion studio as well. I'm going to take my nice soft pencil, my 8B, and I'm just going to do my own version of that bathtub with the shower in it. All right, so again, I'm not drawing too large, but I'm going to draw here the bathtub. There it is. Okay, has the rim. And there's the base of it. And then at one end of that bathtub, it has this shower, which comes up, and the shower arm, and down, and the shower head. All right, so again, give yourself a really, really simple version of the Kentridge bathtub. And his bathtub, it looks like even has little feet on it. I'll add the little feet there at the bottom. All right, that's it. Now at this stage, don't add any of the water. Let's begin there just with your bathtub and shower attached, just like that. And now we're going to go through the process of bringing motion to it, animation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a frame here, okay? But I would like it to sit on that shower tub for just a couple of moments before the water starts coming out. So I'm actually going to take several frames, okay? And by taking several frames, it's going to hold on that image for a moment. So I just took 5 frames of just that shower and bathtub sitting there. Now I'm going to start to add my water. All right, so now I'm going to add little bit starting to come out. Okay, there. All right. And I'm going to take a frame. Okay. And now I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm going to extend those out slightly and bring in some more. There we go. And I'm going to take another frame. All right. And then I'm going to go, oops, it's giving me advice. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to extend even further, drop it down. There we go. And take another frame. Now, I'm also going to start to bring in erasure because I'm going to give us a little bit of the illusion that we've turned the water on and then turned it right off again. So in this next frame, I'm actually going to extend down the bottom, okay, as our water continues to drip down. There. Okay, but then I'm also going to take my eraser and I'm going to begin to erase the top. All right, so now I'm just going to come in with my eraser and I'm going to cut the water back from the top. I'm going to redraw my shower head in there. All right, and I'm going to take another frame. And now I'm going to continue that process. So I'm going to extend the drips down as they start to go into the tub. There. Okay, massing them together like that. But then I'm also going to be erasing more and more from the top because we've shut the water off now. I'm going to be clever though, and I'm just going to add one little drop that comes out at the end. All right, and take another frame. All right, and I'm just going to continue this process. So now I'm extending my water down even further into the tub. All right, I'm going to erase more from the top because we've shut that water off now, but except for my little drip, which now I'm going to put further down and erase where it was coming out. There. And we're going to see how this all flows together in just a moment. All right, now further down into the tub. I hope everybody's doing all right out there. We're going to get creative here in just a minute. There. All right, and I'm going to erase more from the top. Now I'm going to move my drip down even a little bit more and erase the previous drip. Part of the beauty of this is that you see the ghost, the trace of your previous drawing. And that's the wonderful thing about erasure drawing, is that you're seeing this layering. You get the illusion of motion, but then you're seeing all of the previous drawing. So there's a fancy word for that in contemporary drawing. It's called the palimpsest, which comes back to old texts where you could see the ghost of a word that was replaced by the author when it was rubbed out and another word was put on top of it. But seeing that ghost of the previous drawing is really, really lovely. Okay, and now we're down, we're inside, we're putting all that water is going in, splashing into our tub. We're erasing out now even more, except for our drip, which continues down. And erase. All right, and then hit your frame. All right, and I'm already up to 13 frames again. And you should probably be right around the same amount. So let's see how it all comes together. I'm going to go ahead and play now. And there's our shower. All right. And it's just that simple to create animation or a motion drawing. And obviously that's only 13 frames. And we did that whole process in less than 5 minutes. So you can imagine if you were spent a little bit of time with this, how much you could develop the drawing, move things in the drawing, erase them, redraw them, and create just an amazing combination of different impacts and effects. And of course, you can have some elements that are static, like we did here with the tub and shower, and you can have other elements that are dynamic. The other thing you can do, of course, is you can combine this kind of drawing, this kind of erasure drawing, with the puppet drawing. And that's the last thing that we're going to do here this morning in our last 15 minutes together. Again, once I have that done, if I wanted to save it, I could pause it, go back out into my now increasing catalog of small motion drawings that I've made. And again, I could click and hold it That'll open up this window and then hit share. And then I can download it to my device and then upload it to my Instagram or upload it to YouTube, or certainly email it to us at Quagoma so that we can see what you've done. But I'm hoping after the workshop today, I'll be able to go on and see all of these wonderful new motion drawings that you've created. Okay, so let's do our last one together then. All right, I'm going to, again now, go into new movie. So I got a fresh canvas. Oops, nope. Oh, that's the one I just saw. Sorry, I confused myself for a minute. All right, and we're going to do now a combination of a little bit of erasure drawing, and we're also going to make a puppet based on this little flag wielding character here. Let me get him right side up there, relative. So where is he? There he is, right there. Okay, so this character that's walking forward and carrying that banner, that flag. And so we're going to make a puppet of him, and then we're going to go ahead and animate that puppet here on our paper. All right, so first things first, grab yourself a sheet of paper that you can use for making your puppet. And I've got a nice white sheet of paper right here that I'm going to use. And we are going to actually do this puppet in 3 different pieces. All right, so we're going to do the body as one piece, we're going to do the flag as one piece, and we're going to do the arm as one piece. And again, it doesn't matter how much detail. You don't have to be extraordinarily detailed with your drawing here. But if you have the Kentridge handy, and I'm actually going to put it right up here so you can see it as I draw this. There's our little banner waving fellow right there. You see him there. Okay, so again, try to keep this relatively small. Don't get too large. So I'm going to imagine his body here, okay, and his legs, very, very quick and loose, not too big. Okay, and I'm not going to include his arm yet. I am going to include his head, but not his arm. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, there's my little fellow right there that I'm going to cut out. Now, I need to have a second, I'm going to move now over because I don't want to overlap the body because we're going to stitch this arm on. And now I'm going to make his arm. So I'm coming here, bent at the elbow. Okay, so there's the arm and the hand. Okay, so that will be able to stitch and keep separate so it can move against the body. And then the final thing I'm going to create is that banner. Okay, so I'm looking at that banner now, and I'm going to come up there and get that beautiful motion there. Okay, and so there's my banner. Nice. All right, so we've got 3 pieces now. Next step is to cut out those 3 pieces and then to stitch them together for our drawing puppet. All right, so I'm going to move this and we'll switch cameras back here, and I've got to find my scissors, which I have now placed somewhere. There they are. Okay, now I've got my 3 small drawings there, as you can see, and I'm going to cut out each one of them. And again, I'm not going to worry about cutting right up to the edge or being really fussy about it. I'm going to cut fairly roughly so I can see all of my beautiful pencil marks. Give some personality to this little puppet. All right, there he is. All right, everybody go ahead and cut yours out. There we go. All right, so I have him. That's part number 1. Now I'm going to cut out his arm. And again, I'm not going to worry about being fussy and trying to stay inside the lines or on the lines. Just going to cut around it roughly so I can see all my drawing. Okay. There we go. Got my arm. And then I'm going to cut out the banner. And the banner I'm going to be very, very rough with. I'm not even going to cut those curves. I'm just going to cut one straight line that encompasses all of those curves in the banner, and then back the other way. And then I'm going to cut down there the pole of the banner too. All right, there we go. So very, very simple. All right, and one of the things we want is we want to see all of the structure of the making. We're not trying to create an illusion here that's going to confuse anybody about what they're seeing. We want them to see that it's drawing. I'm sorry, let me move my microphone. We want them to see that it's drawing and that that drawing is you know, it's got your hand in it and it's in motion. So I've got my 3 pieces. Let's come back over here now to this camera. Move Kentridge out of the way. And I'll put that piece of brown paper there so you can see that quite clearly. And now I've got my paper puppet little fellow. Okay, I've got my banner right there. And I've got my arm. All right, which I had my arm. There's my arm. All right, and I have my arm right there. Now, what I'm gonna do is stitch my arm on just like that. And then I'm going to stitch my banner to the puppet's hand, just like that. Okay, so you need your needle and thread, same needle and thread that you had before. And again, keep it very, very loose and a very simple stitch. So I'll come up here into this camera so you can see it. Again, I'll move the light over. Okay, so maybe that's too much light. Okay, so now I'm going to flip it over to the back side. Okay. I'm going to come up through, try not to put the needle into your thumb. I'm going to come up through there, leave the tail of the thread hanging out, move over a tiny bit, and then just go back down to the back. Okay. And again, you just can leave those tails of thread hanging out there. All right. And I'm going to take my scissors and just trim it. All right. And there's my first joint done. So I've got the arm on. Now I'm going to attach the flag. Okay. And I'm going to go do it the same way. So I'm going to grab the flag. I'm going to put the flag behind the hand. There. All right. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to come up through. Try not to stick yourself in the thumb. And then back down through. Again, leaving a little bit of space. If you get those holes too close together, they might tear out, which you don't want them to do. All right. And that's it. And I don't mind. I'm just going to leave all that thread hanging out because I don't mind. The look of that thread is actually quite lovely too. All right, so there we go. Now I've got my little banner carrying puppet ready to go right there, okay? Now, I'm going to incorporate into this drawing, though, a little bit of erasure animation, too. So we've got that puppet, and I'm going to do this time on white. So I'm going to move over here. I'm going to get my, there we go. I'm going to get my shower out of the way. Don't need that anymore. Okay, and bring my puppet back in. All right, there we have it. All right, so if you're ready to go this time, go ahead and once you've got, hopefully everybody's got your puppet stitched together now, get your puppet and put your puppet down on a sheet of paper that you can also do some drawing on top of. And I'll show you how we can make a whole environment and a whole movement for your puppet. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this in my frame. So I'm looking here now, and I'm seeing how it's in my frame, and I like that position where it is right now. And I'm even going to bring the ground in, just like it is in the Kentridge. So I'm going to bring the ground in, and it's even got this grass, which I'll bring in like that as well. All right, good, good, good. And there we go. So now I've got my ground plane, and I have my puppet. I'm going to start there, and I'm going to bring the arm down and the banner down like that. All right. And once you're ready to begin, just start taking your frames. So I'm going to take a frame there. Okay. Now I'm just going to move the puppet forward slightly, move the arm slightly, and move the banner slightly. And the thread should enable you to move all of those things against each other. Take another frame. And this is where you can be quite playful, you know, be inventive. Think about what sort of movements you might want to create there. And if at any point you want to preview what you're doing here, I'll take a few frames and I'll show you. And just keep moving it. I'm going to let this thread and puppet move there too. There we go, as I keep moving across my hilltop. There we go. And then my puppet's going to tumble at the end. Okay. All right, so he's going to start going down. This flag waving is not working. down even further. Flag starts to go. All right, now, if at any point I want to preview, I just hit play. All right, and that'll show me the sort of movement that I'm getting. If I then want to go back to adding more frames, I can just pause it, scroll to the end, and then I can just keep adding. Okay, so I'm going to move the puppet even further in this collapse, add another frame, move it further. This system of drawing, and now I'm even going to start to do some erasure. Okay. So as that puppet starts to collapse, and again, I don't mind the fact that when I do the erasing, that you actually see the drawing that was there before. And now my grass is going to start to die. All right, take another frame, move my puppet even further. Now I'm going to erase again. So let me hold my paper still. Erase again. And again, I don't mind that I'm seeing that. And now my grass is really starting to collapse. I'm sorry, this has turned into sort of a melancholy animation here this morning. And take another frame, okay? And finally, down completely. And I'm going to erase that grass completely, redraw in the hill. Okay, maybe just do a few. There, okay. And take a final frame. All right, let's put it all together and see what we've got. Nice. All right. And hopefully this is only the tip of the iceberg for y'all. You can begin to see how drawing can start to become much more than just the development of that static two-dimensional image on a sheet of paper, but the way you can start to think about drawing as something that exists in time, as well as in the space of your paper. And once you start to bring duration, sequence, series, animation into your drawings, it'll open up a whole realm of possibilities that you may not have ever considered before. Let's switch it over here. I know that I'm out of time. This always happens to me, that I just tragically, I go and go and run out of time. But look, I want you to just play, just experiment. Again, this is something that you can do with other family members, get people involved with this. If you weren't able to do the stop motion animation, there are a number of different apps out there that enable you to do it. And as I said, you can also take individual photos with your camera and then batch import them. You can even do that in Photoshop if you have somebody in your household who's a Photoshop whiz. But the idea, though, is just to stretch, to play. That's what this whole Draw Along series has been about since the very beginning, was to try things that might be a little uncomfortable, that might be a little bit different, or ways that you haven't thought about drawing or experienced drawing before. But the results, as you saw at the beginning today in that montage that Shannon showed us, have just been extraordinary, what people have been creating. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you take the opportunity to play. I hope you share your animations, your motion drawings with us. I'm going to throw it back over to Shannon, who's going to talk a little bit more about that. But look, I have to say again, thank you so much, y'all. I know as I said, I know there are people here with us this morning that have been here for the entire month, and I so appreciate that. But if you're a first timer, I hope we see you again too. We'll keep you posted. I take this as part of my mission as an educator, is to try to get out and try to do these things with the community and invite people into this process. And so you just watch this space. There's more to come. All right. Thank you so much, y'all. And hopefully I'll see you soon. All right. Bye-bye.